There are words that are not meant to sound nice. They're meant to shake you, like a punch straight into the truths you've always avoided. These simple philosophies are not just sentences. They are raw realities about action, courage, and wisdom. The very things people often lose when life becomes too easy. They remind us that success doesn't come from luck, but from preparation. That power reveals a person's true nature. That fear makes us die slowly inside, while courage is what helps us truly live. If there's ever been a moment when you realized you are the biggest obstacle on your own path, comment 1. Because this is the moment you need to hear the uncomfortable truths, the ones that hurt, but heal. There's a truth not many people are brave enough to face. Most of the pain in our lives doesn't come from others. It comes from ourselves, from our procrastination, from our fear, from knowing what's right, but still choosing what's easy. And then when everything falls apart, we say, "I wish I had known this earlier." But the truth is, you did know. You just didn't listen. The words you're about to hear are not pretty quotes to hang on a wall. They are wake-up slaps, warning signals for those who are living an okay life while wasting each day without realizing it. Ask yourself, how many times have you delayed something important, thinking, tomorrow is fine? How many times have you known you needed to change, but waited for a crisis to finally start? How many times have you lied to yourself that you're fine, just because you were too afraid to face the truth? You can endure pressure, pain, and failure. But can you endure looking directly at who you really are? Because power, success, and fame have never ruined anyone. They only expose the truth of who they already are, the version they themselves tried to hide. We live in a time where everyone wants fast, easy, effortless success. But Einstein once said, "An intelligent person solves a problem, a wise person avoids it." Most of us choose the first way. We wait until everything is a mess, until the damage is too deep, until we're completely drained. And then we start fixing. Have you ever asked yourself, why do I keep repeating the same cycles? Why do I keep making the same mistakes? Why does my life never seem to truly improve? The answer is simple but painful. Because you never stop to sharpen your axe. You just keep chopping, 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 and wonder why you're exhausted. You keep running, but never ask, where am I actually going? These philosophies have lasted for 100 years, not because they're beautiful, but because they're true. They expose a reality most people don't want to hear. Freedom can be stolen from the outside, but failure always starts from within. No one can destroy you unless you first give up on yourself. You can't lie to the whole world forever, and you definitely can't lie to yourself. If these words sting, that's not an accident. It's a sign that you're finally ready to look at yourself honestly. Something you've avoided for a long time. Once you dare to face the truth that most of your pain comes from within, another question quietly appears, persistent and deep. If the problem isn't really other people, then what inside me is steering my life off course? This is the moment where most people turn back. Because realizing you are part of the problem is always harder than blaming circumstances. But if you're still listening now, it means you've already stepped one foot into a journey not everyone is brave enough to start. In part 1, you saw the truth about procrastination, fear, and the ways we sabotage ourselves. But now, you're about to see something even more painful. And even more important, it's not just the wrong actions that mislead your life. It's also the things you never do. You stay silent when you should speak up. You give in when you should stand firm. You accept good enough because you're too afraid of losing what's familiar. You choose safety instead of truth. And one day you wake up, look around, and realize your life looks nothing like the life you once wanted. Not because you chose the wrong thing, but because you let others choose for you. We are taught how to behave, how to live, how to succeed. But almost no one teaches us how to understand ourselves. And a person who doesn't understand themselves will always live by other people's expectations, not their own dreams. That's why Einstein said, "Try not to become a person of success, rather become a person of value." But we do the opposite. We chase what society applauds, not what our soul longs for. We try to impress instead of trying to be honest. And the result? We become people who are good at living on the outside, but not good at being human on the inside. We have goals, but no direction. We have achievements, but no peace. We have everything, except ourselves. Once you realize you've spent too long living by others' expectations, one question rises to the surface, clearer than ever. So, who am I really, and what kind of life do I actually want? This question sounds simple, but it is one of the biggest fears of many people. Because to answer it, you must be willing to take off every mask you've ever worn. You must face the version of yourself you've been hiding. The version that isn't perfect, not as strong as people think, not as confident as you pretend, and not as happy as you show every day. But that imperfect version, that is the real you. And only when you accept it, do you have the chance to rebuild your life. We often say, "I don't know what I want." But the truth is, you do. You've always known. You just never allowed yourself to say it out loud. You're afraid of being judged. You're afraid of being rejected. You're afraid of disappointing others. And worst of all, you're afraid of disappointing yourself if you choose wrong. But stop and ask yourself, where will you end up if you keep living someone else's life? That's when you realize feeling lost isn't a sign of failure. It's an invitation. An invitation from life, asking you to stop, to look inside, and to choose again. Einstein also said, "A problem cannot be solved with the same level of thinking that created it." This is true for life as well. You cannot find yourself by continuing to live the way you always have. So what's the first step? Not a huge transformation. Not a grand plan. Not becoming a brand new person overnight. The first step is simple. Be honest with yourself. Ask yourself 3 questions. What in my current life feels the most wrong? What do I secretly want but haven't dared to admit? If I wasn't afraid of anything, how would I choose to live? Write them down. This is the moment you begin to step out of your old life. If you've ever felt like you've been living for others, comment, "Me too." Not for anyone else, but so you can finally admit to yourself, "I deserve a life that fits me more than this." Once you dare to write down what's true for your heart, something interesting happens. The picture of your life begins to sharpen. Not because everything outside changes, but because you change the way you see. You start to realize something you never really noticed before. Every feeling of being lost comes with a message. A reminder that you've outgrown the life you're living, that you've moved beyond your old self, but haven't fully stepped into your new one yet. That's why you feel off balance. Not because you're going the wrong way, but because you've stood too long at the border between what's familiar and what's right for you. And then you begin to review your journey. You realize that there were times you stayed quiet, not because you were kind, but because you were afraid. There were dreams you gave up on, not because you didn't deserve them, but because you believed you weren't good enough. There were chances you walked away from, not because they weren't meant for you, but because you didn't believe you were worthy of them. None of that is failure. It's part of growing up. The part where you must try, fall, and get it wrong, until one day you're brave enough to say, "I'm going to live differently." That's when you start seeing life with new eyes. You realize that what you used to call fine was actually just barely enough. That some relationships you clung to were really just fear of being alone. That some goals you chased weren't dreams. They were obligations. Change doesn't arrive like thunder. It begins as a small, quiet shift inside you. Like the moment you realize that chasing approval no longer excites you. Like the moment you understand that peace matters more than being right in everyone's eyes. Like the moment you look at your old self and feel light. No blame, just gratitude. Because without those lost years, you wouldn't have learned how to find your way. Without those inner battles, you wouldn't know what your heart truly longs for. And without those painful moments, you'd never have the courage to step into the life that is actually meant for you. The next part will take you deeper into the process of rebuilding yourself. Not through frantic effort, but through calm, powerful awareness. As you move deeper into the journey of finding yourself, you realize something you were never quiet enough to see before. Change doesn't begin with doing differently. It begins with thinking differently. Because every action comes from a belief. And for years, you've been living under beliefs that no longer fit. I have to be perfect. I'm not allowed to fail. I must make everyone happy. My dreams don't really matter. I'm not good enough to live the life I truly want. These beliefs quietly shaped every choice, every step, every dream you dared or didn't dare to follow. They're like invisible ropes that don't choke you, but keep you standing in one place. And because you've stood still for so long, you've started to believe you can't move. But the truth is, those ropes were never locked. Only your fear was. This is the stage where you start to look straight at those old beliefs and gently ask, if I stopped believing this, how would my life change? The strange thing is, the moment you ask that question, you've already started to break the chains. Because self-questioning is the first step toward freedom. You begin to see clearly. You're not as weak as you thought. Not as small as you once believed. Not as useless as hurtful words made you feel. You've just been covered in the dust of fear. And once that dust is brushed off, you see yourself more clearly. A person who's been hurt but still stands. A person who's been tired but still moves forward. A person who's not perfect but deeply wants to be real. This is a powerful shift, You realize your worth doesn't come from anyone's expectations. It comes from your courage to live truthfully. You begin to change, not because you want to prove yourself, but because you finally understand yourself enough to stop living against your own heart. You begin choosing more gently, living more slowly, feeling more deeply, and loving yourself more fully. And in that moment, you understand something profound. Life doesn't need you to be strong. It needs you to be awake. The next part will take you to the crucial step: action, rebuilding your life, stepping out of your comfort zone. By now, you've looked at your past, recognized your fears, and loosened old beliefs. But the journey doesn't end there. Awareness is the light. Action is the path. And this is where many people stop. Not because they don't want change, but because they believe that changing their life requires one big, dramatic move. But the truth is, life changes through small steps repeated daily. Someone decides to read 10 pages a day. Someone spends 5 minutes writing down how they really feel. Someone gives themselves 1 hour a week to do something that feels true to them. Someone dares to say no to the first thing that no longer fits. Someone dares to say yes to a chance they used to fear. No one sees these steps. No one claps when you start. No one knows you're quietly transforming. But these tiny actions are what reshape your entire life. Einstein once said, "You cannot change your life with the same thinking that created it. But you also can't change it with thinking alone, if you never act." So the real question is, what will your first small action be? You don't need to leave everything behind. You don't need to instantly become a different person. You don't need to force yourself into a perfect transformation. You just need to begin gently. Begin with what you can do today. Not tomorrow. Not when life calms down. Not when you feel ready. Today. Try this right after you finish reading. Write down one small thing you can do today to make your life more true to who you are. Just one thing. It doesn't have to be big. And if you're truly serious about this journey, comment, "I've started," as a promise to yourself. Not for others. Not for validation. Just so you know. You've stepped out of your old self. In the end, after you've gone through all these emotional layers, from feeling lost, confused, and afraid, to becoming aware, letting go, and taking action, you realize something deeply important. You were never truly off course. You were simply walking away from paths that weren't really yours. And to reach where you truly belong, life sometimes must lead you through the dark. Not to frighten you, but to help you see your own light. Those months, you felt empty. Those nights staring at the ceiling with no answers. Those moments when you felt like you didn't fit the life you were living. None of that was proof of failure. It was proof that your soul was growing. You've outgrown the job you forced yourself to love. You've outgrown relationships you had to shrink yourself to fit into. You've outgrown the limits fear built around you. You've outgrown the version of yourself you once called good enough. And every time you grow, life will test you with a stretch of silence. A heavy, uncomfortable pause that makes you feel like you're moving backward. But in truth, you're shedding your old skin. You're expanding from within. You're preparing to enter a new chapter. See it now? All the things you once called crisis were really just the process of returning to who you truly are. When you dare to step out of old beliefs, when you dare to act even while afraid, when you dare to listen to your inner voice, you change the direction of your life. No audience needed, no applause required, no approval necessary. Because this is your journey. And then, on a very ordinary day, you'll wake up and feel that your heart isn't as heavy as before. The world will look the same, but you won't. You'll be calmer, lighter, more honest with yourself. You'll know who you are, and you'll know where you want to go. That's the moment you realize feeling lost was never your enemy. It was a door leading you back to yourself. A door you avoided for so long. A door you finally chose to walk through. And now, standing here, where your old life and your new life meet, you get to choose the direction. Not the direction others want for you. Not the direction society labels right. But the direction that makes your soul quietly smile when you think of it. Your journey isn't over. It's just beginning. Lighter, truer, more aligned with who you really are. And I believe you will keep walking forward with a peaceful heart and a courage you never knew you had.